Georgia dominates Alabama, and there's a lot of questions we have to ask. We're going to give you all perspectives. We're going to break down the game like nobody else can. That's why you came here. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're almost to 200,000 subscribers, 200K, let me say, and we appreciate you guys trying to take over the space. David Cohn, former Michigan quarterback, Blaine Crain, former Western State, Colorado wide receiver. And guys, before we get into the playoff talk, because it's become very interesting now. And there's a couple things I want to separate when we get there. We have got to talk about this game. And, you're going to hear your generic, oh, well, Alabama sucks and Georgia was amazing, this, that, or the other. But I was shocked schematically at what Alabama did from a play calling and adjustment standpoint, and really the way they tried to come out. David, I'll start with you. You got to give all credit to Georgia on defense. And to be honest with you, I thought Georgia's offense just played okay. I thought they just played okay. They played it safe a lot once they realized Alabama was struggling to move the ball. But Alabama came out early, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of Ohio State, Michigan last year. Not that the discrepancy between the teams was that vast, but Ohio State tried to be something they weren't against Michigan to prove a point. It almost seemed like for the first quarter and a half, Alabama was trying to run the ball to prove a point, and the sequencing was redundant. You could tell what Alabama was going to do from a play calling standpoint, but you beat Georgia because you were able to use the short pass and the quick game as an extended handoff, and you just tried to prove a point like you were Billy Badass in this game. And it blows my mind that and we'll get to the too high, that they stuck with that for so long.
Yeah, and I think they had bigger problems than that. But honestly, we were all over this thing in our preview. I told you guys a few things. One, I don't believe there's going to be any psychological edge just because Kirby Smart in Georgia has lost to Alabama, and even Alabama without Nick Saban. And the second thing was, I told you guys this all the way back after that win in September, and I picked Alabama to go on the road and beat Georgia in between the hedges, and they did. I said, I don't think Alabama wants to see Georgia again, particularly with Georgia's ability to turn around and hand the football off. And Georgia won the rushing battle in that first game, and it didn't end up mattering because of what? Third down. We talked about this, and I said I have a hard time believing Alabama's going to go 13 of 19 again on third down, and I have a hard time believing Georgia's going to be as bad as 2 for 8 on third down. Here are tonight's stats. Georgia on third down, 6 of 15. Alabama, 3 of 14. And another big thing here is Alabama was not healthy, and Alabama wasn't healthy against Florida State, and they lost. And who was out tonight? LT Overton. They missed him. Jam Miller missed him catching balls out of the backfield. They missed him protecting for Ty Simpson. And I think what a lot of people are going to take away from this game is, oh, the recipe's easy to get to Ty Simpson and Alabama on offense. Just bring pressure. I think that is an understatement, or that's overstating it, actually. It's not just about blitzing Ty Simpson. If you just do that and bring the same blitzes, he's going to eat you alive by replacing the blitz with the ball. It's about bringing different pressures, showing different looks. No one's better than that at Kirby Smart. And there were some instances, including the interception tonight, where Kirby's showing 6 up, but at the end of it just brings 4.
Yeah. And where we're sitting right now, starting this, just for full transparency, there's still a minute 50 to go in this game. But, guys, I'm looking right now, and Alabama's leading rusher is Daniel Hill, who has 4 carries for 11 yards. Alabama has -3 rushing yards as a team right now. Now, in college, you do factor in sacks, but that's insane. You look over on Georgia's side, I know Gunnar Stockton, you're going to look at the stat line and be like 20 of 26, pretty efficient, 156 and 3 touchdowns. Bro, Georgia threw one pass past 15 yards. Like, at the end of the day, Alabama's defense was on the field the whole time. Cone, you bring up injuries, and you're right, but Georgia was also missing their starting center. I think that had a little bit to do with why they were trying to protect the offense a little bit, not just lose the game. And Alabama early was trying to take advantage of that matchup, and it just didn't work out. But, Blaine, there's so many things we can talk about, but I want to start on one side, and that is Alabama offensively. Kind of like I was asking Cone about sequencing and play calling. Georgia, to me, did the two extremes tonight. Like, typically you fall back to the median most times. But Georgia was either in too high, keeping everything underneath, or bringing pressure. There wasn't a lot of the middle. So Glenn Schumann and Kirby Smart decided to hang out on the fringes of this. And we were talking about this during the game. Just because you're in too high, and Alabama could not run the ball when Georgia wasn't too high, but just because you're in too high doesn't mean you never throw the ball past 10 yards. And the couple times they did on that drive that was extended by the penalty, you had a pass interference and you had a ball that Ryan Williams should have caught down the field. It blew my mind. I thought Ryan Grubb had a really bad night. I thought him and Ty Simpson had a really bad night.
To be honest, not only a bad night starting off, I'm pretty sure Alabama came out and ran it the first 3 plays of their first drive and punted it. So I agree with what you're saying, Jake, in sending a message. But another thing, I thought Ryan Grubb adjusted terribly. Right? You knew what Georgia was doing when they were bringing pressure. Georgia immediately knew where your hot was. And I thought one thing that Georgia did fantastic and kind of made the difference, I can't name you really an Alabama skill player outside of Ryan Williams who broke a tackle in space.
Jeremy Bernard on the touchdown. That's the only one.
Sure,
but he was nowhere in the first half.
Yeah, and another thing that kind of pointed out to me, I mean, when was Alabama's first deep ball? Halfway through the third quarter. Look, if you're going to bring pressure, the way you're going to have to beat Georgia, what Tennessee did somewhat, is you're going to push the ball down the field and hope for your one-on-one matchups. And you saw some success there. But I thought Ryan Grubb, Jake, and I agree with you, walked in this game with a completely wrong game plan, trying to be somebody else. And the one thing about it, if you're down 14-0 against Georgia, you're basically down 40. Right, especially coming in after halftime, because you're about to go against Kirby Smart, who's the best in college football when it comes to halftime adjustments. And look, I know Kirby is a hell of a coach, maybe the best coach in college football right now, but I hope Glenn Schumann gets a lot of respect. A lot of respect, because look, we've said this all year. This haven't looked like the Georgia defense we're used to seeing. Right. And it's still not, because they're having to bring pressure to get quarterbacks, but everything else is starting to check off that list. Right. Stopping the run, tackling in space, winning your one-on-one coverages.
Yeah. Well, Georgia's been elite stopping the run all year. I mean, that's been their best foot forward defensively. It's not that they couldn't get pressure. It's that they couldn't get pressure without bringing extra help. That was the thing. And typically, Georgia's been able to get there with 4. And you don't have to be a football savant to understand that if I can put pressure on you with 4, then I can do a lot of things in the back end and protect myself and get the best of both worlds. But I want to make a point, and I think this gets lost to the casual viewer or when people talk in generics that are in sports media. You know, getting a sack is the ultimate form of pressure. It's not the only form of pressure. And Cone, you know this as well. My goal was always, when I was calling plays defensively, it's that if I can get a sack, that's great. It puts you even further behind the chains. It makes you more predictable. But if I can get you off your spot, or even if I'm rushing forward and I can get pressure in the backfield to affect you, whether that changes the window you're throwing to, whether that changes the way your body is balanced, or if you can get enough on the throw, an incompletion is a win to me. It's right under a sack. I thought Georgia actually got pressure without getting sacks tonight, even when they didn't blitz guys, and that creates a lot of problems on a quarterback and still protects you and covers your you-know-what in the back end.
Yeah, and here's something that I noticed too. It looked like Kirby Smart and that defense with Glenn Schumann, they were saying, which way is Alabama most likely going to set their protection on this play, and let's come from the opposite side. And it was usually they were setting protection to the field, and they were bringing like a linebacker and a safety combo from the boundary. Again, sometimes just bringing 4, which isn't technically a blitz, but overloading one side and at least forcing Ty Simpson to audible and to flip the protection. Again, doing that every single play for 4 quarters. You up your chances to get home occasionally, and they got home a lot. Also, Ty Simpson's legs were not a factor in this game, like we've seen them be a factor. And they even called power read at one point right up the middle, but that wasn't a factor on design run, certainly wasn't a factor with the scramble. A couple other things that I wanted to hit on here in my notes. Special teams for Georgia, obviously the block punt at the beginning, huge. Kirby Smart moves to 18-0 when Georgia blocks a kick. I mean, Jake, you're a special teams guy. I want you to touch on that in a little bit. But the last thing I want to say here from my notes, and this happened in the third quarter. There was a penalty flag, but before the whistles had blown, Georgia's defense got a hit on Ty Simpson and knocked him back. My wife called this one out. Not one Alabama offensive lineman stood up and got in the face of those Georgia defenders. What is that about? Now, I know you don't want to get a penalty and you don't want to get an unsportsmanlike conduct, but when your quarterback gets hit after the play like that, no matter if it's bang, bang, and then Georgia's going to get penalized or not, where are those offensive linemen in a conference championship to go and defend their quarterback.
Well, I think that was a microcosm of who kind of had the juice in this game.
Yep.
Who was kind of the intimidating team in this game. Who was applying the pressure at pressure points in this game. It felt like it was Georgia. It felt like Georgia was the better team starting on the third drive. You come out and you get that penalty that puts you behind the chains. Alabama gets the ball. You're like, here we go again with Alabama, Georgia. And then to Blaine's point, they try and, be somebody they're not and run it into a wall 3 times. Then you punt it back and we know what happens. When I used to give presentations to our guys on special teams, when I was a special teams coordinator, one of the first slides in the PowerPoint I would pull up is the Dan Reeves stat. And it's 88% of the time, if you block a punt in a game, that team wins it. 88% of the time.
That's crazy.
That's a pretty high margin in this sport. And, you brought up the one with Kirby. That backs that up even to a higher degree because he's batting 1,000 when that happens. But I also want to say this. I want to flip this Blaine and go on the other side. I thought Alabama's defense played pretty well, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you're on the
now,
field the entire game.
Georgia, you could tell, went into conservation mode
Yeah.
once they got up 14, especially right before the half. And that's what happens when you have a defensive-minded head coach. They tend to err on the side of conservatism to not lose the game when you feel like you have control of the game. And I understand that. It's like a governor on a golf cart. But, Georgia hit a couple plays. They went to the now screen a ton, which was an extended handoff. I thought Georgia's offense was just okay. It felt like the way Alabama was trending at the end of the year, that when you ran into a team that was more talented than you weren't going to be able to get away with playing like that offensively because the defense had really started to rise. They played good again tonight. But once you get to a high enough level, being imbalanced and unbalanced is not a winning recipe. You're not going to be able to survive like that. So before we get into the playoff talk, from an Alabama defensive standpoint, if you're Kane Womack, it's like, damn, man, we were on the field the whole time, and we had a lot of bad field position, to be honest with you.
I mean, you can't. I mean, if you're Kane Womack, I don't know what else you can really do, to be honest. I mean, I'm interested to see the play count, right, from an Alabama offensive standpoint and a Georgia offensive
or time
standpoint.
of possession. I mean,
Time
maybe
of
I can
possession.
pull it
Well,
up
I don't
right
have to
here.
see
Time of
that, brother. I
possession,
already
Georgia
know
won
who's winning that.
36-23.
Yeah, I already know.
36-23.
Look, the one
Wow.
thing Kirby is so good at, right? If you let him dictate the tempo of a football game, if you let him get his feel in to a football game, it's a python, it's an anaconda. You're screwed. You're cooked. And we talked about this the other day. First of all, no one thought Georgia was going to kick Alabama's ass like this. Nobody. If they sit here and tell you that, I think they're lying.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, Alabama couldn't run the football. Don't be fooled by an Auburn team who's about as goofy as they are out there when they had 100-plus yards. Don't be fooled by that. You're going against Georgia. But I did think with the athletes and Ty Simpson, the way he's been playing, right, with Ryan Williams somewhat emerging this game, and you have Bernard, I thought they would somewhat keep it close. It was just, I don't know if I've seen a Georgia team dominate this much in an SEC championship game.
Which is wild when you look at the other Georgia defensive players that
crazy.
they've had, which is insane to say. I think, again, this may be Kirby's best coaching job, dog.
Sure.
Like, this may be his Mona Lisa.
I feel
This
like we
may
say
be
that
his
every
master.
year about this man.
Dude,
Which
well,
is-
the thing is, like, it feels like it's more of an even fight now, yet his magic's still better. Like, that's what it feels like. And I'm telling you, you want to talk about cleansing the spirits if you're Georgia after what's happened against Alabama for a while. How many times did we use the word anomalous about the Alabama-Georgia game earlier this year when you actually dive into the tape and the numbers? Saban was talking about it today on game day. Like, it was kind of wild the way that game ended up the way that it ended up, because if you look, a lot of the most important areas you felt like Georgia had an advantage outside of third down, which we know how important third down is. And I want to go back. If you're watching this right now, again in the comments, let it fly. Let it ride. We want to, if you're angry, if you're happy, if you're jubilant, if you're devastated, if you're somewhere in the middle, if you're in Tokyo right now and you just discovered us, right? And you're eating whatever the hell y'all eat out there, right? Japanese food or whatever. We want to know what you think. But Aaron Murray, we talked about this on our Wednesday show when we did predictions. And Aaron said, don't let Georgia be up at half.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because they are the creme de la creme. They are the cum laude of second half adjustments. That's what they've been. And you walk into halftime up 14. Like, that must have felt like you were up 1,000, to be honest with you. And there's always adjustments, even when you're up 14. And you saw that. The only reason Bama scored, let's be honest, is because DeMello Jones slapped a guy after a play. Like, that's the only reason that Alabama scored.
Yeah,
or this one's
on that drive.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Against the same guy. It was Jones twice. You had the pass interference. But I want to get in the playoff stuff because this is really thick. And there's a lot of things that we need to get to when it comes to it because it's very consequential at the end of the day. But just from a cleansing standpoint, David, if you're a Georgia fan, this is basically like you've hit your inner zen, right? Or whatever they call that. Like, this is peak, right? You're glowing right now.
Yeah, and it feels like back-to-back years, Georgia hasn't had a perfect regular season, and somehow they've won this league twice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like last year, it felt like such a disappointment because you get knocked out by Notre Dame and you're not national champs, which Kirby Smart has raised the standard to that in Athens, but you still won the SEC. And here again, they sit and they've won the SEC and they've been able to beat Alabama despite that regular season loss.
Yeah, all right. I want to get into the playoff talk. All right, but the first thing I want to do, and I don't think enough people do a good enough job of this, is separating what we think should happen from the reality of what we think the committee is going to do. Because those two things are separate. In my opinion, right, and I've said the same thing about Vandy, it is very hard for me to get past the fact that you would leave a 10-2 SEC or Big Ten team out because the SEC and the Big Ten are better than the Big 12 and the ACC. We can argue by how much. You can argue if you think the Big 12 is better than the ACC or the ACC is better than the Big 12. But I think for most rational thinking individuals, you know that the Big Ten and the SEC overall are better than the Big 12 and the ACC. I think punishing Alabama for losing to the number 3 team regardless it's wild to me to keep them out of the playoff. Now, BYU, I've been constant with this. I don't think BYU should be punished. I think they should be treated like an 11-1 team. And as bad as they looked and as bad as Alabama looked, I don't take one game over a full body of work in a full season because I watched Ohio State look terrible against Michigan and then look like Heaven's Army for the rest of the college football playoff. But we can say that here. We can say that we think the SEC is better than the Big 12. The committee can't say that. So the committee has to be consistent. So if the committee's going to leave BYU out, which I think they will, and I'd be interested to see what y'all think, because of the way they looked in the Big 12 championship game. After Alabama also got thoroughly dominated, how do you not leave Alabama out and then you rid yourself of the Miami and Notre Dame problem, at least off the cuff, to move them up? Now, I know there's still some issues there when we're waiting to see what happens in Duke, Virginia, and overall, because if Virginia wins, they're going to be in. But I mean, David, I'll just start with you, man. Like, what would you do, and then what do you think the committee's going to do?
Anytime a football team plays a game, you're leaving a data point to be considered when we have a subjective way of determining who gets in the playoff, and that's fair. So this is a data point that will be used as evidence. The reason that I don't think this loss in the championship game for Alabama should be weighed as the heaviest data point is for two reasons. One, the goal of a football game is to win the football game, not just to lose by fewer points. So what I mean by that is if Alabama near the end of this in the second half is just saying, hey, as long as we lose close, we'll improve our chances to make the playoff rather than go forward and try and win the SEC championship game, then they wouldn't go for it on 4th down inside their own 20, which they didn't get, which led to another Georgia touchdown, which makes the margin of victory look worse, right? And the second thing here is you lost to a team that you already beat in the regular season. So if there are people out there pounding their chest about, hey, you have to take into account Miami's win over Notre Dame just because it was week 1 of the college football season doesn't matter, that happened. You can't say that, but then say, oh, but we have to ignore Alabama's win over Georgia in week 4.
David, let me blame before I get to you because I want to correct one thing I said as well. David, I get what you're saying, right? And when you're dealing with human beings, obviously, you know, we saw what we saw tonight and the committee saw what they saw. But how is it fair to say, oh, well, this is the last data point that we saw with Bama when Notre Dame or Miami are some of these other teams that are not playing a conference championship game. Now Alabama has an extra data point. Doesn't that disincentivize anybody from wanting to play in the conference championship game if we now know that Oklahoma is for sure in and they didn't play, or that Notre Dame may be for sure in and they didn't play, but because Alabama successfully got to the conference championship game to play the number 3rd ranked team, that now all of a sudden it's fair for them to have an extra data point, good, bad, or indifferent?
Well, what I'm saying is that I think even based off this loss today, Alabama should be in the college football playoff. Okay. So that's what I'm saying. Gotcha. I think that is what the committee will ultimately decide. And you saw that on Tuesday when they swapped them and Notre Dame to give them an extra spot. So I want to clarify that. But to the point about getting an extra data point, it's impossible not to do. Like, unless you just sequester them like a jury,
no, that's I get it.
Actually, let's just use that analogy. Let's use that analogy. Let's say that an attorney in front of jurors says something, and the judge says, you know what, sustained on the objection there.
Strike it.
Everyone strike it mentally from what you just heard. Well, good luck. What do you think? The committee wasn't watching
I love that comp.
Right? But still, even then, I think they're going to go through and they're going to make a list. They're going to do their rankings, and right, wrong, or indifferent, they're gonna have Alabama in the college football playoff.
Oh God, if Alabama's the last team in the playoff for the last 2 years,
or last team out
in the playoff to not make it, they're going to burn that place.
Well, Blaine. So earlier I said, would they sit here and say, all right, well, Alabama's out, BYU's out, and Notre Dame and Miami are in, so we don't have to worry about it? That actually can't happen.
No.
That there's not enough spots. So the way I'm looking at it right now, and Blaine, you tell me if I'm wrong, and then I want to get to the question just to set this up for the audience, is regardless of what happens in Ohio State or Indiana, I think either of those teams are the loser will be the 4 seed. Correct. That's what I think. Yeah. The loser will be the 4 seed. The winner will be the 1 seed. So right now, to me, the winner of Ohio State, Indiana is the 1. Georgia's the 2. Texas Tech is the 3. The loser of the Big Ten title game is the 4. Oregon's the 5. Ole Miss is the 6. A&M the 7. Oklahoma the 8. Now, what's fascinating is if you go down to 12, I think 12 is either James Madison or Tulane. I think 11 is either Tulane or Virginia, depending on who wins that Duke-Virginia game. Because if Duke wins, you'll have Tulane 11, James Madison 12. If Virginia wins, you'll have Virginia 11, Tulane 12. So that leaves 10 and 9. So Miami right now is sitting at 12. Notre Dame is sitting at 10. Bama is sitting at 9. This is why this move from Bama above Notre Dame last week was so huge. With Alabama losing the way they did, if you were to just bump each team up, Miami would not make it in. But I'm telling you right now, I firmly believe this. There is no way that the committee could put Notre Dame in and not Miami because of the ripple effect that will have. I think that will destroy precedent in the playoffs.
You're worried about ripple effects with this committee?
No, I know. I actually am.
Good for you, brother.
I actually am. I think it would discredit the whole thing. It would discredit the whole thing if you didn't take the head-to-head. So if you had, let's say you've got Miami jumps Notre Dame and Miami goes to the 9. You have one spot, that's the 10. Between Notre Dame and Alabama, 2 humongous brands. So one brand doesn't outweigh the other. Both are going to get tremendous views. Should they put Notre Dame or Alabama in there?
I'm going to say Alabama because it just doesn't feel right to me, right, to punish a team that made it to your championship game. Yeah. It just doesn't. Oh, Alabama sucks. They're getting killed by Georgia in the SEC championship. Miami didn't make it to the championship, and the ACC is awful. Awful.
So then what
Notre
about
Dame,
BYU?
I keep BYU. If you keep Bama in, you got to keep BYU in my opinion. Like I don't think you can punish BYU for looking terrible, right? And then not punish Bama for looking terrible because at the end of the day, Notre Dame join a conference. I'm sick of saying.
Well, like again though, like I don't even think it's about the conference. What should happen? I'm gonna tell you what should happen. Let's say Ohio State beats Indiana. Let's say Virginia beats Duke because it can work both ways.
Sure.
It should be Ohio State 1. This is if Ohio State beats Indiana and vice versa if Indiana beats Ohio State. It should be Ohio State 1, Georgia 2, Texas Tech 3, Indiana 4, Oregon 5, Ole Miss 6, A&M 7, Oklahoma 8. Then if it was me, I would go Alabama 9. I would go Miami 10. I would go Virginia 11, and I would go Tulane 12. That's what it should be.
So no BYU.
No BYU.
Why?
Or Notre Dame.
Again, I can sit here and play this game, and you know what? I would have no problem with BYU being the 10 behind Alabama. But I just know they're not going to do that. BYU's done. I could sit here and tell you that's what I think should happen, but I know it's not going to happen. So they're going to choose between Miami and Notre Dame. That's what's going to. It's such a conundrum right now, and that's regardless of what happens, guys, in the next two games. It has no effect on that. It has these next two games, the Big Ten and the ACC title, have no effect on whether Alabama or Notre Dame or Miami will be in. It's already done right now, so they're having those discussions right now. Personally, I do think BYU and Alabama should be in.
Yeah,
I do.
Well,
but that's not what's going to happen.
Here's the thing: we've said a lot of times. Well, the committee at the end of the day, their mandate is to get the 12 best teams in, and there is no such thing as precedent with them because they don't care what happened before. They're just going to do whatever they want anytime. So if that's the case, why not just ignore the mandates of having to take the top 5 group of the top 5 conference champs?
Or the group of 5 automatic spot. That's what I'm saying. To be honest with you, David,
that actually is not a requirement. See, that's how we think about it a lot of times is, it's the Power 4 conference champs and then one group of 5. But that's not actually it because we're looking at a situation now where 2 group of 5 teams could get in because a 7-5 Duke team might win here when they kick off in a couple minutes. So that's not actually the language. It's just the 5 highest rate group conference champs, which I've actually always loved. Win your conference and get in. I like that reward. But the committee at the end of the day is like, why do they even have to follow that rule?
Well, that's why if we really wanted the 12 best teams and we had a set system of 80% objectivity, so metrics, and 20% subjectivity, there would be no automatic bids. You take the best
I like
12
rewarding
teams.
a conference champ. But
well, again, that's what I'm saying. I don't mind that, but
all over the place where it's like, Duke could win at 7-5, win the ACC, and they're going to take what? They're going to take James Madison and they're going to take Tulane then, which Tulane beat Duke in the regular season. That makes sense.
I understand that, but again, like James Madison would not be ranked ahead of Miami or BYU or any of these teams that are on the bubble. Or I can go. I can go through I think, what are they, 18th? Like, you wouldn't get in over Utah. Mm-hmm. Like, if it was about the 12 best teams, there would be no automatic bids. That's just the truth.
The second that I saw them flip on Tuesday night when we did this, when they flipped Notre Dame and Alabama, I put a futures bet on Miami making the college football playoff. Not because I think it's going to happen. They've loved Notre Dame this whole time. They're probably just going to keep them there at the end of the day, and it's going to be Alabama and Notre Dame, to your point, before you get to the ACC and the G5 team. But at plus 400 odds, and with their language of saying, hey, the closer Notre Dame and Miami get in the rankings, that's when we'll take head-to-head, I put a futures bet on that.
No, I think they're going to take Miami over Notre Dame.
This is worst case scenario for the committee.
It is. This is DEFCON 1. And we want to know in the comments. We want to know what you think. Who should be in? Who should be out? What do you think about the game? Anything else you guys want to add? We got a couple more games to watch. The Big Ten, where we're going to have an instant reaction right after that, too.
I'm here for all of this.
Oh, I love it so much.
If they keep Alabama and kick BYU, it's gonna be a riot. I'm just telling you.
It's gonna be like that Netflix show I watched a couple months ago.
At BYU,
BYU fans are far nice and ethical and moral, which is why I love them.
It'll be the nicest protest you've ever seen.
It will be the most organized, orderly. It will truly be a
Yeah,
peaceful protest. Yeah. It will. All right. Well, let us know in the comments what you think. Make sure you're subscribed. Stay locked in. We'll be back for more. This is Crain and Company. Welcome home.